beautiful day. Yeah. It's like half an hour after waking up. I think that's alright. I still have some hot chocolate, which might have turned into lukewarm chocolate by now, which is surely not as desirable as hot chocolate, but if you fancy chocolate, it's still better than no chocolate at all, right? Well, it's still steaming. Assuming that it has been sitting in there a couple of hours, I probably might not be able to burn my tongue, which is also a very desirable state. You know, I really like this cup. This cup. It's so simple, right? And also, you know, this cup will never pretend to be anything else. But this cup is actually not true, because I could use it as a hat, only now it's full with content. But if I would put it around, I could actually wear this cup as a hat. And who would say it's not a hat? Just because some people use this as a cup doesn't mean it cannot be a hat. And that's the interesting thing. So this is basically an empty object, because in that sense it does not have choice. So you can fill that cup with whatever meaning you want to put into it. To you it might also be something that you just like an decoration, right? You may just really like the way this cup looks, and you put it there. You may even say, this cup is only used for hot chocolate. It's a hot chocolate cup, right? You're giving it a name now. You could also say, this cup can only be used for tea, which is not my case, because my teacup looks different. Maybe I introduce it now. You see, this is my teacup, but more my black tea cup. I always drink black tea from this, and I always drink hot chocolate from this. And I also only put hot chocolate into this thermos bottle, and the tea, the black tea, because I want to, the black tea is supposed to sit a long time so that it's like really nice and strong, you know, always goes into this one. And so I figured out after a while, you know, this is how I like it. And it actually puts a smile on my face. And sometimes I'm a bit anxious that either of these things are going to break. And now another example. This, you can see that as a hat. But if I would put a string on top of this, I actually would have a bag. Wow! Right? Then it would be a hat bag, maybe, or just a bag, if I wanted to hide the fact that it was actually a hat. But now it would be a bag. But I like to wear this as a hat. And this, for instance, could be standing around to do nothing at all with it and collect dust. Or it can be used according to its purpose, or one of its purposes, right? You could also use it, right, or maybe like this, or maybe like this. Oh wow, so many possibilities. And maybe you don't like it if it's like all nice and clean, and then you just mash it up a little, then you just mash it up a little. Oh wow, let's mash it up a little. Oh wow. And then just see, oh. And now we come into the realm of words, all right? Because if we don't use words, we will look at this and we will realize that it's scrambled. Now, if I would be a salesman And I wanted to sell this Rubik's Cube as, its original state where, this color is, this side is all red and this is all blue and this is all yellow and this is all orange and this is all white and this is all green. And now, you know what salesmen do? They use words, and probably the way they generally, it's mostly words, to distract you from the fact that this cube is now scrambled. So let's say this cube represents a car that has some kind of defect. Now you come and you say, you polish it nice and maybe you use wax to cover up scratches so that it looks like it doesn't have any scratches. And then a buyer comes and he says, oh wow, this cube looks awfully scrambled. I was actually looking for a cube that's like even sides, right? I wanted one that has white on all this side and blue on all this side and yellow on all this side and green on all this side and red on all this side. But now this one is like really scrambled. Like really, really scrambled. It's kind of mixed up, That's actually not what I want. Yeah, but you're missing the point about this cube because it's one of a kind. It's a very special cube, and what you don't know is that, blah, blah, blah. I don't have the energy for that kind of stuff because everybody can see that it's scrambled. But now if we're getting into the world of salesmen, they can actually manipulate you by using words to hide the truth. Because the truth is, this is hot chocolate in here and not tea. But because you cannot look inside, it might be actually tea. But I might be saying to you for whatever reason that I'm drinking tea here. Oh, it's so delicious. But it's hot chocolate. But you can't see that. And you don't know. Unless you would drink it. And that's the same with the moon landing, right? People tell us they've been to the moon and they show us the footage and they even have people saying they've been to the moon. And everybody who questions that is been called a conspiracy theorist. Theorist. Just one. In German you call them lateral thinkers or Querdenker. It's like people who think not in a straight line, but more like in certain times. And how that works is, now imagine people who only think in a straight line. Somebody comes and he says, this cube is not scrambled. Yeah, this cube is not scrambled. Some people say you shouldn't use the word not because your mind doesn't hear it. So somebody says this cube is not scrambled, but what he's actually saying is this cube is scrambled. Or he means this cube is scrambled, but he's saying this cube is not scrambled, but he means this cube is scrambled. Now you have to understand these things because it's very complicated to deal with people who are lying, and also to understand why are they lying. Are they really bad people because they are lying? Or are they lying because they are confused? Maybe they have been trained to lie from an early age on, by their surroundings, because everybody is lying, but only through their words. And that's the interesting thing, because a person, they can talk a lot. And people will listen to the words. But what the person is actually saying is something completely different. Sometimes you have people that actually say the truth, but nobody can hear it because they think it's a lie. Right? It's like people that say they have talked, I was watching this movie yesterday. No, not yesterday. It was a very good movie. It was a very good movie. It showed me a lot of myself, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for truth about myself. I'm looking for how am I, who am I, where am I clinging, and for that purpose I sometimes watch movies that speak to me. So I go online and sometimes I spend quite some time to find a movie that satisfies my needs, and then I settle on it. And sometimes before I'm watching a movie, I'm a bit angry. And that movie made me really angry. Wrong. This movie did not make me angry. This movie showed me my anger. And the movie's name is Detachment. And it's a very, very good movie. And so is Nightmare Alley. Holy moly. Like that movie, that was one of the movies that I had watched a couple of months ago. And I was like, this movie is one of the best movies I have seen in a long time. But then you hear this, kind of box office, it was a flop. Why was it a flop? Because people don't appreciate good stuff anymore. All people appreciate is bullshit. So they rather watch these Marvel Avenger things which have no depth whatsoever. Like even the clothes of these people are being animated. I didn't know that. They wear these weird tracksuits or however they're called, and their clothes are being animated on the computer. Like maybe not all of their clothes, but a lot of them. I didn't know that. And now of course you can talk about, well, is it good or bad? Yeah, I don't really know. I like to, because there's so many movies out there. Like really good movies. Like please, take the time. Like listen to this. Watch Fiddler on the Roof. This is one of the best movies I have seen in my entire life. Fiddler on the Roof. The singing, it's so honest. You actually have the feeling it's a documentary about people living in a village and they're just doing their stuff. If I was a rich man, la 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 ba dee 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 dum. Hey, this is like this is a real man. And it's funny, the man in itself, but it's also sad. But it just shows the kind of mentality you need to survive in this kind of world. You just have to have kind of a companion in yourself that keeps you safe, that you can talk to, that you can talk about your sorrows. And whether you call this life or God, or whether you say, I'm having a conversation with my grandma, ultimately it does not matter. You can even speak with Mother Nature. Whoever you want to connect with them, or it, or her, or him. And that's very, very difficult because a lot of people will fail to understand this, and they will make you look like you're crazy, while you maybe for the first time in your life you start to make sense. And so to talk in general about liars and cheats, it's a very, very complicated thing to even attempt to figure out what is actually a lie. Like, what we've been told is the basic principle about what a lie is that you say something that is untrue. Now, I've been spending a lot of time with this concept of lying. And yesterday I watched another movie, not all of it, because at one point, I got so confused into, wait, am I actually telling the truth or am I lying? And so I watched Liar Liar with, how's he called? Oh yeah, Jim Carrey. And at one point it made me so furious because some movies, they're just so ridiculous. And to me, what is a lie? What is a lie? Have you ever asked yourself what it means to lie? And how do you know if you are honest to yourself or not? Like, people say you have to be honest. What is a lie? What does it mean to lie? And what does lying say about he who is lying? And how, who says that he's lying? So there are a number of factors that we have to look at to understand this thing. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. That's why I'm stretching out this moment now, so I can build a story in my mind and come to a conclusion. But what you have to understand is that this conclusion is based on my own observations and the way I feel about it. Because ultimately, I have to make conclusions for myself, because I'm the one looking at the world. And I can look at other people and I can listen to their own stories, but ultimately it boils all down to, how do I feel about it? Somebody might talk to me about all kinds of things, and I might just gobble them up. And that's what I mean. There's like people who only think in a straight line. That's a very simplified way of saying that. They only think in a straight line. What does that mean? So somebody comes and he says, "We've been to the moon." And you're like, "Oh, wow," right? That's like the essence of being gullible. A rapist comes to you and says, "Hey, I have some candy in my car. Do you want to come with me?" And you say, "Oh yeah, sure, I'd like some candy." And then you go with him, and then he's gonna rape you. Well, how could you have known that he was a rapist? Well, first of all, why does he need to offer you candy to get you anywhere? That's already a bit fishy. So I was once in that place in Sharm el Sheikh, because I was actually going to Jordan, which is a great country, and I wanted to go diving there with friends in Aqaba. So we first took a plane to Sharm el Sheikh, and then we had to stay there one night, and then we moved on by taxi to a very small village. It was like completely desolated, the complete opposite of Sharm el Sheikh. I forget how it was called, but it was a port where you then could take a boat or a ferry to Aqaba, where we wanted to go. Most people, they fly to Amman, because that's the capital of Jordan. But because we said we have 3 weeks and we want to go 1 week diving in Aqaba, and then we want to go 2 weeks traveling. And so we said, okay, we will take the plane to Sharm el Sheikh and then take the ferry Nuvaiba. That's how it was called. That was such a great place. I mean, just understand, some countries are really, like, you're literally blown out of your mind what's happening there. It's really interesting. Okay. Anyway, what was happening, I'm just gonna stick with this for a while, just to build up the tension of the story. So what was happening, we landed in Sharm el Sheikh, and then we had to spend 1 night there, and it was really horrible. Because as soon as you left your apartment, there were everybody wanted to sell you stuff. Everybody wanted to make money with you. And when you didn't give them money, they got really angry because they thought, well, he has money, why doesn't he give me any? It's like greed. You could also, of course, say that I'm greedy because, I'm holding on to my money. But maybe I'm holding on to my money for good reason because I actually want to do something else with it. What I want to do with my money is to travel. And that's just how this kind of world is. Some people stand around and they want to sell something, and other people take their money and they go and travel. Because maybe they've been born into a different country, and maybe they've been, for some reason, maybe they just have money. So should you be angry with them because they have money and you have not? No. Because whatever circumstances you have been born into, that's your dilemma. That is your set of cards that you've been given. And now you have to find a way to get out of this. And if you are one of hundreds of people who's trying to sell shit in Sharm el Sheikh, maybe you don't understand. Because if you're trying to sell something that everybody else is selling, you're not going to sell a lot of it. So you have to sell what is unique to you instead of pretending that you want to sell something that everybody else says because it's actually the easy way. You don't have to think a lot about it. You just sell what everybody else sells. But you could also only sell yourself, not in the sense that a prostitute does, but you do what you like to do, and you're being honest about it. And that means, your heart's fire. We're talking about speaking truth. I can stand here and be completely open about anything because I don't have to hide anything. Because I don't have, do I have an intention? Do I have an intention when I stand here and talk? I have to unravel this for myself because I have to understand whether I'm phony or not. And the truth is, I often say that, well, one reason why I'm doing this is because I want to raise awareness for certain things. I want to speak about the things that I've realized. And partly I also want to sell books. But I'm not going to force you to buy my books. But I do partly also want to sell books. This is why I'm talking here. Because I said, this is going to be my job, and now I have to make an effort to do that. So I'm not lying about that if I stand here and talk. I'm just standing here and I talk. But I'm not only standing here and I talk because I want to sell books. I stand here and I talk because I actually feel like I want to talk, because I have something to say. Because I also could only write books, and then I could write books and I could write books about lies. I could write a book about lies. I have done that already. Things, spineless cowards, is dealing with the concept of lies. And I could then use my YouTube content to make it really funny and kind of wiggle away from saying anything meaningful or giving you anything at all. But I'm literally pouring my heart out. I'm sharing what I can, which is honest to who I am and to what I understand at the moment. I'm not talking to you about meditation and sitting there in pure bliss, because I don't do that. Because I don't feel that. So what am I doing? I'm just talking about my experiences that I have already made. And that's why I can say, as far as I'm concerned, I'm speaking the truth. And on top of that, I'm sharing with all of you a lot of the things that you can use to outgrow yourself. Alright, so just to get that straight, alright? Because there's a difference, right? There are some people, sometimes you watch these YouTube videos, right? And then some of these commercials come up. And then there's somebody who says, I'm gonna tell you what is the best way to make money. Yeah, and then you're trying to get something out of this. And then you listen to their content and you realize they're actually not telling you what the method is. Because the method is bullshit. Because the best way to make money for them is to tell you that they have a way to make money. But also the thing is, if you're selling it like this, a lot of people are gonna try it, and then you're not gonna make a lot of money with that anymore. Because everybody else is doing it also. There is no best and easy way to earn money. Right? It's like people who say, oh, cryptocurrencies are really good. Or NFTs, right? It's really good to earn money. But I don't see that. I think for some people it is, but you also have to have something to sell. If you're just making art, it's boring. Right? These days, people want to see you. Why are people these days so fixated on they actually want to know what they're buying? Because they've been lied to too many times. Because we do live in a world of lies. And everybody's lying because everybody wants money. And for that, they're willing to sell their soul. Which means, if you speak to people and you say what they want to hear so that they will buy your stuff, you're phony. But sometimes, right, you can sweet talk people into buying your stuff by pretending to be really nice. So we were in Sharm el Sheikh, and there was this guy, and he said, would you like to come? I sell perfumes, and they smell exactly like these good, he was naming all these boss and whatever their names is. And then he took us into his little shop. I don't want to say little, he was taking us into his shop because I don't want to belittle him. And then he sat us down there, and then he asked us to drink tea. And then he kept talking, and he kept us trapped there by sweet talking us. And then he brought out perfumes. And then we didn't really know how to get out of this. And now you also have to understand that I wasn't really a courageous person when I was younger. Most of the time, I was quite shy. So speaking up to others always, I felt embarrassed always. I got a red head. And so at one point I said, alright, whatever you're going to say now, whatever you're going to do, we won't buy anything here. And in that moment he looked at me like this, out. All his friendliness was just a disguise. He was only friendly so that we would buy his products. You know, it's like a rapist sweet talking you into coming with him. And then you do that and then he's gonna rape you. And that's how it would have felt like if I would have bought his product. I would have felt cheated afterwards. And I know this feeling because I've had it a lot of times that I bought something and afterwards I actually felt cheated. So this is where, you know, lies and truth, it's a very intricate thing, if that's the word. So let's say, you know, let's get back to yourself. What are you doing? What are you doing in your life? And what do you want to do? Do you know that? Or have you never asked that question because you're afraid of the answer? Because that's what a lot of people do. They don't even ask themselves what they want because they're afraid they're not gonna get it. So instead, they get all kinds of other things. You know, I see that in a lot of people. They're unhappy. And then they sit around and suddenly something annoys them. You know, I have this very interesting example. You know, you have like a power plug, right? The thing that's in the wall. Now, I don't know the right word. Maybe that's the word already. No, it's not the plug. Maybe it's a power station, right? You know, it's that thing in the wall that you then put the plug in, right? And then electricity surges through it and voila, you know, you can film yourself. But now it's actually a very like, you know, the plug is in there to an extension cord, and then there's another plug and that goes into my laptop, and then there's a USB extension cable that goes into the laptop, and that then goes to another USB extension cable, and that then goes into the webcam. So it's like, alright. And there's this very good example of somebody that I know. Well, it was my dad. And sometimes you observe people doing things that are really funny. So he was having this, you know, you have like a plug that you can put into the wall, and then you have a switch on that. So that whatever you plug into the plug, you know, you can switch it on and switch it off without taking the plug out and putting it in all the time. So you can leave it in there and then you can And there was something that was annoying him about it. You know, that's what he said. So he thought this was his problem. He thought this plug was really annoying him, so he wanted another one. He wanted one that is a cube, right? Like this. That's what he wanted. He wanted a cube. A plug that's like a cube, so that you can put like 3 things at once in it, and then you have one thing to turn them on and off. And then he bought that. And when it arrived, he was like, oh yeah, nice. That's the solution to my problem. You know, that's gonna solve my problem. That's gonna solve my problem. Yeah. You know, I haven't really seen these things in a while, because after a while it started to annoy him. And he went back to the ones that he used before. And now where are the ones that he bought to make himself feel better? Well, they're probably somewhere dusting away in the cellar. So he wanted to feel good, and he cheated himself by denying himself what he actually wanted. And he bought something instead. That's like an easy way out. You want something, what do you probably want? You want to speak the truth. You want to say, I fucking hate all this shit. Right? You want to say, what are we doing here in society? I mean, people running around, driving in cars, making the air toxic because they're too lazy to walk. Forcing people into school and then teaching them all that junk that makes no sense. This kind of history, it's all distorted. It's all, they're not just telling us history, they're also judging it. So it's always a certain perspective that's being highlighted when you're being taught anything at all. And that's what I mean with some people, they think in a straight line. But not only, right? You have to see through all the shit that you're being told to actually see in a straight line. Maybe that's why it's called lateral thinker, because your thinking is like an arrow that you shoot straight at truth. And so if a politician is standing on top and he's saying, we need electric cars because the climate is changing and we don't want the climate to change because we will have more hurricanes and we will have more floods and we will have more tsunamis and we will have deserts everywhere. So we need to stop climate change, and for that we need electric cars. And then the government starts to boost electric cars because that's what the industry wants to sell now, right? So you have people that want to sell electric cars, and then they go to the government, they say, hey, we can make a lot of money with that. Yeah, and then they bribe some politicians, and then the politicians go and advertise the product. Which means that ultimately the politician is just a salesman these days. They just sell to you what the industry has on offer. And whoever makes the best offer to the politician, gets his place in, TV time or something. Yeah, and then you of course have like the pharmaceutical industry that has an interest to sell things, and then you have, the concrete industry has an interest to make streets. So they want to create work so that they can make money. And the concrete industry has an interest to use concrete to make streets. And then all kind of businesses are connected to that. Because one person wants to sell concrete or tar or however you call that. All kinds of people jump onto that. Oh, let's make more pavement. Let's cover the whole world in concrete. But concrete is basically a form of desert because nothing grows there. It's very dry. And the rain cannot go into, if you have a barren acre that has been neglected and exploited by years of farming, it hardens into almost concrete. And when it rains, the rain cannot sicker into the soil. No, it runs off as surface water. So the land is being robbed of water, and the water goes immediately to the stream, to the river. And where does that go? Well, it goes to the ocean, which means the ocean levels are rising, and the groundwater that all the trees and nature and we depend on is getting less and less. And which means the soil is drying up from underneath, and it doesn't get anything from the top anymore. Because now we have, this is all managed here. The system is extracting the water from nature. And at the same time, we kill all the rainmakers, and trees are rainmakers. Every forest is a rainforest. every forest is a rainforest. And you want to have rain. But what we try to create is, like, you want to have Spain everywhere. You want to have blue skies. That's what people are looking for, because they've been told, oh, let's go on holiday to Spain because they just have blue sky every day. Well, they don't really. And then there's periods where they have that. And that seems like something desirable, but there have to be areas where it rains a lot, because nature is depending on it. And you cannot really compare Spain to Germany. It's a different climatic zone, and they have an ocean quite close. And now the people come and the politicians say, we need electric cars to stop climate change. Right? That's like, what? Because the truth is, no. We need to have less cars. People have to start to be less lazy. They have to walk more. They have to eat less. They have to engage with nature. We have to have less concrete and more green. We have to, start reforesting the world. Because if we take down all the forests, what does that mean? We will create the planet of Dune. Which means we will have only deserts. And that means the climate will be more hot. Because why is it hot in a desert? Because there are no trees. Shh. Because what do trees do? They bring up water from the ground, because in the desert there is water, but it's underground. In a desert is water, but it's underground. So to get to that, you can either build a lot of wells, but then who's maintaining them? If you have trees, it starts to become a whole system, which means the trees dig into the ground and their roots bring up the water, and through their leaves, the water is being spread into the entire environment, which cools the climate because water binds heat. And then, the water goes up and then it's going to rain again, and then the trees bring that up again. So you have like a whole system that is functioning. But you need a mediator. You need trees in between to bring the water from under the ground to the surface, so that the rain can fertilize all kinds of flat plants and crops, that you can have streams. We need trees for that. And trees are the lungs of the earth. And what are trees also? Well, they are weather makers, in a sense, because they cool and heat the climate, and like stuff happens, and then you have rain and wind, and that's just a natural process. So trees make the climate a bit more intermediate. But if you take away all the trees, you either have really cold or really hot. But we want to be somewhere in the center. So we have to stop listening to the people who just want to sell us stuff. Because if somebody just wants to sell us something, he's hiding his true intentions with words. So you have to really look at, what is he actually saying? Like, what is he actually saying? Because what it sounds like is, we need electric cars to stop climate change. But what he's actually saying is, I want to make money. Or the system needs money, And that's why I'm trying to sell electric cars to you. Please buy my product. That's what he's actually saying. He's not saying anything about climate change. That's just a word he puts in there to make people gobble up his shit. So how do you deal with that then? Well, you just have to educate yourself, man. Or woman. You have to start educating yourself. You have to start looking at these things instead of running away from them. Because that's what most people do. They're so afraid that they're being lied to that they always run into the liar's arms. Because they think, oh, the state only has what's best for me in interest. No, the state is trying to keep itself alive. And they're willing to lie to you for that. Because the state needs money. But look at what the state is doing. The state is exploiting our mother, which is what we say. You know, if you have realized where you come from, you know, who gave life to this body? It's nature. Without nature, you know, what would I be wearing? Who's producing all this stuff that we're using? It's nature. Nature gives us the materials to make this camera. Nature gives us the materials to make this, even gives us the material to make plastic. But nobody wants to acknowledge that. You know, it's like a child that is ungrateful for having been born and is constantly angry at his parents. Yesterday I also watched the movie Mirror Mask. I didn't watch all of it, but I liked the beginning. Only I was too tired to keep watching it. So nature gives us everything, but we don't want to give anything back. It's like, that's mine now. I made this, you know, I made plastic. You know, I'm gonna keep it for myself. You know, I'm gonna say, science did this. No, it's nature that did it. You were just the mediator. And that's what we have to understand, that we are not the creators of all of this. We are the mediator. It's like the potter brings out the shape of the pot. But you could say the pot already existed. He just reveals the shape of the pot. But the pot was already there. It's like when I draw an image, or let's say I write a book, okay? Sometimes it's really confusing, because in a way the book already existed. You know, I just had to bring it out. It already existed. I just had to find it in myself. So I cannot say that I'm doing all these things, and that's why, what am I supposed to lie about? You know, somebody sells you this and acts like he did that, but he did not do it. Nature did it. He just took it and made money with it, and then he feels good. But money cannot give him what this thing could give him. You know, I really like this thing. I think it's called an amethyst. I have it because it's actually interesting, because it's at the window side and it can dispel negative energies. Now, I don't understand too much about it, but it can change the climate of a room. So, I mean, if you're a gullible person, a really gullible person, then you also have to understand that even a gullible person has to reap or harvest the consequences of their ignorance. And your ignorance is that you think you are helping nature or the climate or the planet by buying an electric car. That is a lie, my friend. Because if you would actually educate yourself what it means to produce an electric car, I mean, What I've heard is that for a 500 kilogram battery, this is like a loose number. I think the amount was 250,000 tons. Sounds ridiculous. Of earth have to be processed or something. Maybe that is not entirely true. Doesn't matter. What matters is, for one battery, you have to dig up a lot of soil. And where do they get this soil from to get to these materials that they need, which I assume are some kind of metals? Well, usually you have very rich soils underneath forests, and even more rich soils in the area where you have the Amazonian rainforest. So African soils in Tanzania, they have this red color. They are very rich. Unless you do a lot of agriculture on them, then they're not so rich anymore. So we used to have rich soils here in Germany. But because we've exploited them for so long, they started to become more and more unfertile. And then you start overusing fertilizers, instead of, there are ways to do agriculture that are really sustainable, but nobody wants to do them because they take longer. Because if you use a fertilizer, everything grows really fast, but it doesn't have the time to develop. Your body needs time to develop. All these things, they take time to have a stable environment. But everybody seems so short on time, while actually we have so much of it. Anyway, so, liars and cheats. When I used to play Super Mario, I would always cheat. But actually, what is cheating? Because when I was playing Crash Bandicoot, the second one especially. Okay, you could say I was cheating because I was looking up on the internet where to find the gems. But I just wanted to find them, I didn't want to spend hours figuring it out because sometimes it just was too complicated. And so, some of these secret gems I found by myself, and some of them I looked them up. I got as far as I could, and then I started looking it up online. And that's okay, because other people found that already. And I didn't have to, I just wanted to play the whole game and I wanted to have 100%. So it's not really cheating. And when I was playing Super Mario, like the really first version, there are these secret passageways that bring you to another platform, and on that platform you can jump. You can jump ahead. You can go from world 1 to world 4. Just in the second level, if you know how. So I always thought that was cheating, but it's actually not. It's actually not cheating, because I'm not lying about it. I would then say, right? And that's the point, I often got into trouble because I was just saying the truth. I was saying the truth. And there were actually times, I was in a relationship for 4 years. And it started, I think, roughly at the age of 21, and we had a long distance relationship. And she seemed to have a problem with me watching porn, which I had done for most of my life. Well, at this point, not most of my life, but I started at the age of 16. So I was like heavily addicted to watching porn. And when I was alone, what was I supposed to do? To quench my thirst for a soft woman. Yeah, I would watch porn. And when she came to visit, we watched a movie. And in that movie, it was about, somebody said, he was watching porn. And then she asked me a very casual question. Do you still watch porn? And actually at that time I had tried to watch less of it. And I'm not quite sure whether I actually... But there was a time where I was just looking at images. But I think actually I was lying. Yeah, I probably was lying. So I said, no, I'm just looking at images. And I thought that this was better. And me saying that started a whole series of complete madness. Like she was screaming, I thought you said you stopped. It's like, she was like kicking against the wall. And she was running out on the streets. And she was screaming at me and pushing me away. And I thought, what have I done? I mean, we were just watching a movie. And it was often like this. We were doing something very casual. And then I would say something because I didn't really think about what I was saying. But it's actually good to not think too much about what you're saying. But sometimes you have to learn from that. Sometimes it's better to just say nothing. But also not always. I think actually always. And then what happened? I just didn't know what to do because I tried to calm her down. But what I understood now about women is you cannot calm them down with words. If a woman goes into one of these emotional rants, these are emotions that she needs to feel. And so the only way you can comfort her, because what I've realized is most women, they don't want to be close to you in that moment. Yeah, it's like an angry cat. These are emotions that need to be felt. And if you're trying to talk them out of it, you're taking away their healing because they need to show them. And they need you to love them while they're showing these emotions. Men have the same sometimes. You have to allow each other to show emotions without judging them and without, talking them away. Because you cannot really, that's the thing, you can actually deceive yourself out of your emotion. So you have an emotion and then you explain to yourself that there's no reason to have this emotion and that you actually don't have it at all. That's when I say to people, you're afraid, and they say, I'm not afraid. And they come to me 5 minutes later and they say, oh, you know what you said actually doesn't make sense because I'm not afraid. But it's clear that you are afraid, and now you're afraid of being afraid. And you can use words to distract yourself from the truth that you're afraid because you're afraid of being afraid. And then you can use words and you can say, but I'm not afraid. But the not is non-existent. So what you're saying is, I'm afraid. But I'm afraid. So it's better to acknowledge it and to say, I am afraid. I am angry. But I am not fear. Yeah. I have the not again. What I usually used to say was, I'm afraid, but I also have courage. I have courage. Right? It's like what Jurek Bernison in his Dark Materials says. When Lyra asks him, are you never afraid? And then he says, well, I am. But when I'm afraid, I overcome my fear. That's how it's done. So, right, you have politicians that stand on top and they want to sell you stuff because now they're in a position where they are required to earn money for the system because they need money to keep this show going. This show that exploits the planet. They have an interest to keep that going because it places them in a position of power. And so they are willing to lie for that. But they also have a family to sustain. And they also have all these people that are too lazy to take responsibility for themselves and that are afraid and that need the system to give them stability. But to what cost? Are we pushing away the responsibility for ourselves onto the government and then we say, you have to keep us safe? No, you have to keep yourself safe. You have to have trust in yourself and you have to have trust in life. Because if you trust the government, you're gonna realize that they're just screwing you. They're just screwing you. And you're gonna walk around like a slave, carrying this whole shit show of a system that's making the air toxic and the water undrinkable. You're supporting that. So how can you stop? How can you stop lying to yourself? You can cheat, right? So it's, I would play Super Mario, right? And I would use these shortcuts because I just wanted to see how it's like at the end, right? That's what psychedelics are. You want to see how it's like at the end. But you cannot cling to the end. You have to get there by yourself. And I never had the stamina to play. It was too long, Super Mario. It was too long and too complicated. I just wanted to rush through to get to the end. And so psychedelics are one way of doing that. You get a vision of how you could feel if you would put in the work. You smoke a joint. First time it's like, oh wow, I feel so good. Yeah, second time, not so good. Or maybe, the 100th time, not so good anymore. So you have to work for that. You have to work to feel how you want to feel. You cannot just keep ingesting or smoking things that make you feel like this. No, you have to get there yourself because the truth is, right now you don't feel like this. Right now you feel angry, you feel scared, you feel miserable, you feel unloved, you feel unappreciated, you feel all kinds of things. You feel sad, you feel a lot of things. And if you feel a lot of things, you don't know what to feel first. And then you try to feel maybe all of them at the same time because it's like one lump of emotions that's bottled up inside your chest. And what's happening then? You're gonna feel depressed because the weight of all the things that you never felt because you're afraid to feel them, because it would be the first time you would be honest to yourself. And because you're just, you're trying to pretend, I feel so good. Somebody can say that, but I can hear that what they mean is, I feel terrible. Sometimes people say, I'm gonna, they just spend 5 hours in the kitchen cooking. And then you sit down together and you eat, and then that person says, no, I'm gonna do the dishes now. Yeah. No, I'm gonna do it. And you can hear from the way they say it that they don't want to do it. And they say it because they want to seem strong. But when you're weak, it's really stupid to pretend that you're strong. Because when you're weak, it's sometimes better to just admit that you feel weak. Or to simply say, I feel weak. And so why would I help somebody if I feel terrible? So first start helping yourself. And that is what people are afraid of also, because they don't know how. And if you would have to help yourself, you would also have a problem, and that's something that you cannot allow yourself to have. So we just buy stuff on the internet, and then we cheat ourselves of feeling the way we feel. And then we have this one moment where the package arrives and we're like, wow, yeah. Well, actually what we needed was to say, oh man, I mean, what happened in my life that I feel so terrible? I mean, that's incredible. I often say that, how can you feel like this? Sometimes I felt so miserable. Sometimes I still feel like this. And I say, how is it possible that somebody can feel so miserable? Like, how is that possible? And it's actually incredible that you can feel so shit. And when you acknowledge that you feel really shit, the truth will set you free. Because once you acknowledge that you feel shit, you can make choices to feel better. And so if you've ever had a psychedelic experience and you felt good or you felt powerful, most people, they just run back to psychedelics. Whereas what I did was I said, well, it's like sex, right? Sex makes you feel good for the time you're having it, but 20 minutes later you could have sex again. So when I would do mushrooms, I would feel, I would really like what I felt, in a way. And the next day, that feeling is gone. So am I just gonna take mushrooms all this time? No. I'm gonna do it once, and then I'm gonna learn how to get to that feeling by myself. And by myself means, that's why I spend a lot of time on my own. So that I can feel the things that I need to feel, so that I can let go of these feelings. Because if I don't feel them one by one, I cannot acknowledge them, and I cannot let go of them. Because you cannot let go of the things that you actually don't know you are holding on to. And that's then, liars and cheats. You can cheat yourself from your own personal heaven all your life because you think you don't deserve it, you think you're terrible. You can cheat yourself away from that by constantly denying yourself what you need right now. By telling yourself that you don't need it. Because maybe what you really need is to take some time off from work or whatever. And maybe you have money saved up on your account. Maybe you have 20,000 euros. Maybe you have 50,000 euros. Maybe you have a whole house that you bought for yourself. And maybe you really hate your life. Well, what you could do is sell the house, quit your job, and go traveling. And then just figure it out. The point then about traveling is, or you could just move to a really cheap apartment and then use that money to do other kinds of things. Because, that's just a suggestion. But this is something you can do. Because a house, people always say a house is so much better. But you also need a loan, or you first need a lot of money. And once you have the house will cost you a lot of money. Whereas if you rent an apartment, most of the maintenance work, you don't have to do that. Plus, if you rent, you're free to leave whenever you want. It's more complicated with a house. Anyway, so money is something that you should use to make experiences. So if you feel like you're stuck, then you need more experiences. And you can lie to yourself that you're not stuck, that everything's fine. But that's just bullshit. Because then you're cheating yourself out of your own heaven. So the way to go is to look at your life and look at how it truly makes you feel, and then just to look at all the pieces, right? Where are my pieces? You know, where are my pieces? I'm just gonna do that one more time. And then you have to sort them out one by one. You're gonna use certain methods such as reflection. You know, reflection is a great tool to look at how you feel about certain things. So when I watch a movie, I reflect everything that I see onto how I feel. Right? Because that's what I want. I want to feel. Right? I'm watching a movie because I want to understand how I feel about something. So I watched that movie called Her to understand how I feel about life in general. And what it made me realize is that I cannot get love out of watching porn. And so I stopped. How do I know I truly stopped? Well, I feel like I have outgrown it. Because it is actually possible, right? At a certain point, you will learn to live without these things that kept you hooked for so long. Because what was I doing when I was watching porn? I actually wanted love. I wanted love, but I took the cheap way and I watched porn. But porn can never give me love, because what I really wanted was to be with a woman. And every time there was no woman, I just watched porn. And maybe that woman wasn't even enough for me. So, I still kept watching porn because I was afraid of loving her. But ultimately, that will mean that I'm just gonna cheat myself out of my own personal heaven. And my heaven is being with a woman that appreciates me being around. Yeah? That's my personal heaven. And so I have to move the pieces around. Now I have a good foundation, right? This is how I wanted it to be. And now I'm working on these pieces, right? This is like, okay, I'm still figuring out maybe my diet, figuring out this. This is my foundation. You know, this is myself. It's white. I'm doing art. Art is a very good foundation for me. I'm moving my body. That's also good. You know, I'm connecting with myself through movement. I'm connecting with myself through doing art. Right? I'm engaging with myself. And now I can figure out how to engage with other people. And then in the end, it's a complete puzzle. Now let's see if I get that right. Shit. You know, always stuck at this point. But not if I'm doing it in silence, because now I'm talking. Wait, what did I have to do? Okay, that was clearly not the one. And sometimes you just have to scramble it all up. Because this was, you know, now your life maybe wasn't like this. Maybe you already had foundations. You know, maybe your foundation was, I'm cleaning my car all the time. Maybe your foundation was, I don't know what. So you have to scramble up your life. You know, that's what I did. I actually did scramble up my life on purpose. Because I realized the way it was shit. And so I had to scramble it up, and that takes a lot of courage. Because then you have to start from scratch. And that's what I did. And then I figured it out. Because the way my life was set up was actually how other people had told me to set it up. And I did that because I thought they had, only my best, they only had what was best for me in my interest, but they did not. They had an interest what was best for them. Right? So my father wanted me to be an engineer. I said at one point to him, I will never be an engineer the way you want me to be one, right? I will be an engineer of my own life. But I don't study environmental protection so that I can exploit the planet and just sell a product, because that's what he's doing. He's just, and not just, but he's a salesman. So he's interested in selling products. But I cannot sell a product that I don't believe in because it's a lie, right? I can't do that. Because otherwise I would be cheating to myself. So I'm different, I'm not just interested in money. I'm interested in being honest. And so I have to be honest by making honest choices. And so I had a lot of pieces in my cube that were really phony, because I was being taught by people who didn't care about the truth. They cared about selling stuff. And that also includes selling themselves. That means when you're alone at home and you feel terrible, and you leave the house and you dress in a suit and you walk around and you're like, oh wow, I feel really good. But as soon as you get home, you feel really miserable. That's how most people do it. But it's phony. It's a lie. And once you get back home, you will remember that you were telling a lie. And how I got there really easy. Ah, damn it. I just get that wrong all the time. All the time. And sometimes you just have to, this is a cube. You don't have to do that all the time. But I think there's always a stage in your life where you have to scramble up your cube. Because if you don't do that, it becomes too rigid. And what you actually want is, you want to become flexible. And that's why people do yoga, right? That's why I do this dancing. I don't want to be too rigid. I want to be open for change. Because life should always have a bit of change in it so that it keeps interesting. Because if it doesn't interest you anymore, that means you're trapped. And if you're trapped, you have to change something to get out of this trap. You have to change the way you think, you have to change the way you feel, you have to make new experiences. And right, that only works if you want it. Nobody can force you to do anything. Right? And sometimes people are trying to force you to change in a way that you don't want to change, and then you say, but I don't want that. And they try to keep pushing you, but you actually don't want that, because everything happens in your own time. And that's why I cannot force you to listen to what I have to say or to like me. Oh. I can only do what I do, and you decide for yourself if you like what I'm saying. Right? Because that's what I want to do. I want to say what I want to say to the people that want to hear it. And that's what I feel good about. That's what I feel good about. Okay. These are
This I always get right. But there's this one step which is very difficult. And that's what you have to figure out. Oh, now I'm a stage further. Didn't even plan that. You see, and this is just one method of solving it. There are different kinds of algorithms, but I'm using this one because that's the one I learned and I feel comfortable with it. Just as I feel comfortable with doing the art that I'm doing and recording these videos and sleeping on this mattress and having my room in this way, that's how I feel comfortable with. Because that's what I taught myself and that is what works for me. So this method to solve the cube works for me. And so I have developed methods to solve my cube. And these methods I'm using. So you have to be really honest to yourself. And that's all there is that I had to say.